If you don't want a divorce, get out of this house right now. All right. These words came suddenly from my husband. Obviously, I was taken aback. He must have been quite confident that I wouldn't file for divorce to go to such lengths to intimidate me. When I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to seek advice from someone else. My name is Anna. I'm a 30-year-old office worker. My husband, James, and I are about to celebrate our 5th wedding anniversary. We're still waiting for the blessing of a child. This has led to a constant barrage of questions from my mother-in-law about when she can expect grandchildren. My father-in-law passed away years ago. My mother-in-law lives on the inheritance he left behind. Honestly, I feel on the verge of a nervous breakdown with her constant prodding about grandchildren. Actually, I might already be there. Despite seeing me like this, my husband James doesn't lift a finger to help. In fact, he recently started siding with his mother, blaming me for our troubles. I used to adore him for his kindness when we were dating, but after we got married, his attitude completely changed. Without any consultation, he decided we would live near his childhood home. On my days off from work, I am summoned to his parents' house and made to do housework all day long. Of course, there are no breaks. While I'm busy with chores at his parents' house, the two of them either go out together or stay in watching TV and laughing. I was even yelled at once for making too much noise with the vacuum cleaner. After that, I was forbidden to use it and was told to clean with a broom and a rag instead. Then my sister-in-law moved back home. She was originally living in a neighboring town, but due to some personality conflict, she had recently moved back. Her return has only added to my burden. She has a 4-year-old daughter and expects me to make her kindergartner's lunch every day. When I tell her that it's impossible because of my job, I get yelled at by my mother-in-law saying, "Your sister-in-law is dealing with the aftermath of a divorce." My husband says, "Don't you want to be useful to the family?" And my sister-in-law herself, she says, "It'll be good practice for when you have a child of your own, so you should be thankful." So I end up waking up at 4 a.m. every morning. I make my niece's lunchbox and breakfast for my in-laws, then head back to my place, finish my own housework, and go to work. That's the brutal routine I've been forced into. My husband, of course, doesn't lift a finger to help with any household chores. The only time I get to rest is during my break time at work. One day, after living this exhausting routine for a while, my husband dropped a bombshell on me. "Oh, by the way, Anna, you should quit your job." "What?" "I've talked it over with my mom and sister. You know, she's going through a rough time, you understand?" "No, I don't get what you're saying." "Listen, I mean quit your job and take care of the house." He snapped at me before storming off to take a bath. I couldn't see the connection between my sister-in-law's divorce and me quitting my job. My husband is stuck in a dead-end job. And there are months when I earn more than him. Does he really think we can live off his salary alone? Neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law work. I can't understand why they can't handle the housework. Feeling like I couldn't handle any more of this, I grabbed my car keys and drove off to one place that came to mind. That place was my childhood home, a bit far from the apartment we live in now. My parents had moved overseas and no one currently lived there. Because my parents are the worrying type, I couldn't bring myself to talk to them about the matter. Whenever something unpleasant happened, I'd come here. This is my home, filled with precious memories. As I was lost in these thoughts, my phone rang. It was my husband.
"Hey, I just got to the bath and you're gone. Are you back at your parents' place again?"
"Yes, so what?"
"Could you stop running back home every time something goes wrong? We're not kids."
My husband loves my parents' house, but his words simply didn't resonate. "I'll be working from here for a while, and no, I won't go to your parents' house either."
"Stop messing around. Come back home now."
Defeated by his forcefulness, I returned to our house. Afterwards, I quit my beloved job in the fashion industry. My clueless coworkers speculated I might be pregnant. I was given no free time, made to manage the household all day. Even when I caught a cold and ran a high fever, no one seemed to care. I had become a servant in this house, a slave, to put it bluntly. However, one day, amidst this lifestyle, something happened. Guess what? My sister-in-law was getting remarried. Moreover, her fiancé was an executive at a major corporation earning a substantial income. It was quite a shock. My sister-in-law isn't exactly a beauty, and her personality leaves a lot to be desired. I understood everyone has different tastes, and there are all sorts of people out there. The entire in-law family was celebrating, shouting about how she was marrying into money. My sister-in-law, full of pride, showed me a photo of the man. Huh? This man. I thought, looking at the photo when my husband said something unbelievable. Because of this, Anna, your parents' house will become my sister's family place. Wait a minute, that house is what my parents left for me. It's not for you to decide. The whole family has decided. You who lives off my money don't have a say in this. Was the person standing in front of me a devil in human skin? That house was left for me by my father, a place for me to live if I ever had children. James should know this. Why can he act so selfishly? My heart was at its limit. As if to add insult to injury, my mother-in-law said, "You can't even give us a grandchild. Can't you be useful around the house for once?" There was no one on my side in this house. I returned home, hastily packed a few belongings, and headed to my parents' house. I made a firm decision in my heart. I would never go back. A few days later, having received no calls from my husband, I thought he might have reconsidered. Then suddenly the doorbell rang. Standing there were my husband and sister-in-law. "What are you doing here?" "We thought we should take a look around soon," my sister-in-law said, barging in. Despite my pleas for them to stop, they ignored me, snooping around the house. They treated me as if I was invisible. "This house is pretty nice. Too good for you, Anna." "And when do you plan to move out of this house, Anna? My sister's wedding is coming up soon. Get it together," my husband said, unchanged. As I stayed silent, my husband added, "If you don't want to get divorced, leave now." My husband, confident that I wouldn't divorce him, was grinning with my sister-in-law. Looking my way. Got it. Once I confirmed, my husband seemed pleased, saying it's all he wanted to hear. Apparently, under the guise of celebrating my sister-in-law's wedding, they are planning a long, family-only trip, starting tomorrow. Naturally, I'm not included in this little escapade. My husband told me to pack up and leave by the time they get back. Then he and my sister-in-law left with an excited air about them. Watching their backs, I allowed myself a small, mirthless smile. 2 weeks later, the day for my in-laws to return from their trip arrived. My phone has been ringing nonstop since morning. The caller, my husband. Also mixed in were calls from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Finally, unable to ignore the noise, I answered the call.
"Hey, Anna, where the hell are you?"
"I'm at home," I replied.
"Liar, you're not at the apartment or at your parents' place, and what's the meaning of this?"
"What are you talking about?"
"Your family house. There's a for sale sign."
"Yeah, I put it up for sale."
What? What are you talking about?"
"Well, after you all left, I gave it some thought. The house you're in now just seems so dirty. I do like things to be clean after all."
"I'm divorcing you. Don't mess with me," my husband yelled.
That was going to be my line. Let's talk through our lawyers from now on. With that, I hung up on him while he was still shouting. On the day my husband and sister-in-law returned, I had already been in touch with a certain person. He was a friend of my father's, who runs a real estate company. I didn't know anything about selling houses, but he kindly advised me and we managed to make a pretty good deal. As a side note, the apartment we had been living in was in my name since my husband couldn't pass the screening process. Of course, since I had no intention of living there anymore, I canceled the lease while they were away and sent all of my husband's belongings to his parents' house, cash on delivery. Even afterwards, I kept getting calls from my in-laws, which I ignored completely. I recorded all the unbearable messages they left on my voicemail. According to my lawyer, my husband was hesitating even though he had said he wanted a divorce. It seems he didn't want to lose his maid. I thought it would be a long battle, but then my husband suddenly agreed to divorce. From what my lawyer told me, my husband, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law abruptly showed up at his office saying they would divorce me and to process it quickly. My husband had been reluctant about the divorce, but my mother-in-law told him that since my sister-in-law's new husband was rich, they could hire a new housekeeper with money and get rid of the barren wife and get a younger, newer wife. With that, my husband agreed to the divorce. Moreover, they offered to pay a small settlement on the condition that I would not get involved with them any longer. I thought that was supposed to be my line, but I decided to accept what was offered. Not long after, my sister-in-law got remarried. For a while after that, life was quiet. Taking care of myself was so much easier than I thought. I deeply regretted not divorcing sooner. Well, I'm finally free. Time to enjoy my new life. Just as I was beginning to embrace this thought, an incident happened. Out of nowhere, my in-laws showed up at my new home. The moment I opened the door, they barged in, and my ex-husband demanded, "We need to talk, sit down." Despite wondering who they thought they were, I took a seat, then he said, "Come back home, we forgive you." Unable to close my gaping mouth, I answered, "Excuse me?" I wanted them to leave immediately, so I teased, "Oh, are you talking about your sister's husband? Has he disappeared?" The three of them widened their eyes as if to say, "Why do you know about that?" and stared at me. "What, do you know something? After we registered our marriage, he suddenly disappeared. We can't contact him." The mother-in-law added with a hint of excitement, "On top of that, he ran off with our family's fortune. Was this your doing? You've brought us such terrible fortune, daughter-in-law." She looked as if she would attack me at any moment. Tired of their baseless accusations, I decided to reveal a truth to them. "Wow, I didn't know your sister liked hamburgers so much." What are you talking about hamburgers all of a sudden?" "Don't you know? Your sister's husband isn't some executive at a major company. He's just a part-timer at a hamburger shop." Hearing this, the sister-in-law froze at a loss for words. I continued my story. "In my single days, my friend and I loved to visit different hamburger shops. There was one favorite shop where a certain employee always made mistakes and got yelled at by the manager. The man happened to be the sister-in-law's husband. Since I started dating my husband, he told me, 'No more hamburgers,' so I had given up my hobby. I had recognized the man from a photo the sister-in-law had proudly shown me, but I decided it wasn't my place to interfere and stayed silent. When I showed her the shop's homepage for evidence, she stared intently at her husband's picture in the background. By the way, I visited the shop recently with a friend, but her husband was no longer there. He probably left town." That's marriage fraud." "It seems that's what they call it. I'm sorry for your loss." The mother-in-law, who had been silent, said, "You knew and you didn't tell us. We took care of you, who can't even have children, for years. You owe us." At her nonsensical rant, I decided to reveal another truth I had been keeping. "First of all, I'm not the reason we couldn't have kids. Maybe my ex-husband can let you in on that." The mother-in-law looked at her son in shock, and he guiltily looked down. When we couldn't conceive after our marriage, we decided to get tested at the insistence of the mother-in-law. There was nothing wrong with me, but my husband had a very low sperm count. The doctor told us that he was the reason we couldn't have kids. When the mother-in-law asked about the test results, my husband instantly lied that I was the problem. I was angry, but they just said nonsensical things like, "You have to support your husband." Refusing to face the truth, my ex-husband joined forces with my mother-in-law, pinning all the blame on me in the end. "Look, I admit I was wrong," my ex-husband said. "Once the house sells, we'll get a good chunk of money, right? Let's all live happily as a family again." "Well, we've been through a lot, but let's get along from now on," my mother-in-law chimed in. At the end of the day, I realized they probably came here today with the intention of getting their hands on my money. What a disgusting lot. No chance I'm getting back together with you, and I don't consider any of you family. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband retorted, "Getting a little big for your boots now, aren't you? I know, even if you sold the house, you hardly have any savings. How do you plan to survive?" It seems he had sneaked a peek at my bank account during my single days, and now he had this smug look on his face, as if to say, "Now that you know, do as you're told." To poke fun at my situation, the three of them were smirking at me, so I decided to enlighten them with a little truth. "Sure, my savings aren't that much. See, I told you so. But instead, I've invested in stocks, enough to live without working for the next few years at least." Their faces looked like they wanted to say, "No way," as they stared at me. Actually, since I was a child, my father was interested in stocks and investments. He had a knack for foreseeing things, and I inherited those skills and built up a decent amount of wealth. The money that supported my parents' move abroad was all from those successful investments. Of course, I had kept this a secret from my money-grubbing ex-family. Seeing the disappointed trio, I asked, "You can leave now." "Oh, what was it again?" "It's in our divorce conditions. If we approach each other without reason in the future, either party will have to pay a penalty. Are you going to pay, or should I call the police for trespassing?" The word police scared them off, and they left in a hurry. I immediately consulted my lawyer about the day's events and was told to contact him if the ex-family tried to get close again. As expected, once they knew I had assets, my ex-husband sent me a ton of messages begging to reconcile. Nostalgic photos of places we've been on dates, creepy messages like, "I'm here right now, thinking about those days," arrived almost daily. I thought about blocking him, but kept everything as evidence just in case. And yes, I wondered how he managed to text me all day while supposedly working, but I didn't really care. But when he started trying to contact my friends, I decided enough was enough and sent him a message. "I'll go to the police if this continues." I sent him a photo of our divorce agreement and the nearest police station along with the message. After that, the messages stopped, and I never heard from my ex-husband again. I thanked my lawyer, and he dropped a bombshell. Apparently, my ex-husband planned to live off his sister's new husband and had quit his job when she remarried. He was a fool for leaving a decent job at a decent company. "Document you asked for should be arriving soon," I told my lawyer. I had placed another request with the lawyer separately from this matter. Soon after we were married, I felt something was off. My precious personal belongings were slowly disappearing. First, it was a necklace that I bought myself when I was single. Then a fountain pen my parents had given me as a job starting present. Bags, rings, and above all, the fountain pen was something I cherished greatly. When I talked to my husband about it, he yelled, "Don't worry about losing things." Suspicious, I installed a surveillance camera without telling my husband. What it captured was my husband and mother-in-law rummaging through my closet, grinning. Once my sister-in-law moved back in, the footage showed 3 people instead of 2. Taking advantage of my silence, their actions escalated. They were selling my personal belongings, their greed for money fueling their actions. They probably saw the balance in my bank book at that time. It continued until the divorce, so I collected plenty of physical evidence. Just as they thought I wouldn't claim anything, I filed for damages and compensation for emotional distress due to their actions. They must be panicking right now, but it's their own doing. As for what happened to the 3 of them, my sister-in-law's ex-husband found out about this incident, and it seems he took custody of their daughter. Seeing how my sister-in-law didn't seem to care for her daughter, I felt relieved. Just a while ago, I saw the daughter-in-law and what seemed to be the ex-husband happily holding hands and shopping. She had a happy smile on her face, something I never saw when she was at my in-laws. The 3 of them who wanted to live comfortably apparently applied for welfare, but they, being healthy and nothing else, were naturally refused. As for my husband, his pride kept him from finding another job. Eventually, he went to his old workplace and begged on his knees, but they had been hoping for him to quit and ended up calling the police, which he hated. He has to work, but it seems he can only find day labor jobs. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law had to pay me compensation, so they both started part-time jobs at a nearby supermarket. But the 2 of them, who have hardly worked before, are struggling with the unfamiliar work. Maybe it's coincidence, but since they started, the supermarket sales have dropped significantly. They got quite a strong nickname, the plague-bringing mother and daughter. By the way, the marriage scammer is still at large. I thought they owned the house they were living in, but it was actually a rental. Unable to pay the rent, the 3 of them moved to a rundown apartment that was infamous in the neighborhood. Their living is hand to mouth, and it seems they're always fighting. The other day, the police were called because their fighting was too loud. As for me, thanks to their help, I sold the house and used the money as capital to start a new apparel company with a colleague from my old job. Recently, we've been gaining more customers and even featured in magazines and TV. Being able to return to the job I love is the happiest thing for me. Oh, and there's one more thing. I've met a man through work and we're getting married. His parents and siblings are very kind and they've been treating me very well. What's more, we're expecting a baby, and I'll be the mother I've always dreamed of being next year. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life right now.
I believe the job of a teacher is crucial in nurturing children who will shape our future. Shouldn't those who take on this role possess a strong sense of purpose and the basic courtesies of being a human being? The thought of someone unfit for teaching in such a position. Am I the only one that finds this frightening? My name is Matilda. I work as a teacher and am currently teaching world history at a middle school on Maui, Hawaii. Maui is about 2,360 miles away from San Francisco. It's usually a remote island with few flights, far removed from the urban image of San Francisco. I had my reasons for wanting to teach on a remote island, and as if by good timing, my husband Royce got transferred to a government office in Maui, which sped up our move here. Royce has a deep interest in regional revitalization and a strong sense of mission, dreaming of boosting tourism on remote islands. While my husband and I work in different fields, administration and education, we share a common desire to uplift areas that might be at a disadvantage compared to urban centers. But putting Royce's story aside for a moment, I became a teacher largely due to my parents' influence. My father, a former middle school principal, was elected to the city's education board for his achievements. My mother, after 25 years as an elementary school teacher, became an education advisor, offering guidance to struggling teachers and parents, earning widespread trust. Growing up watching my parents, I aspired to be like them. Though I never attended their classes, the praises I heard and the words of gratitude from their students and holiday cards showed their caliber as educators. As their daughter, I felt a mix of pride and happiness, and a deep desire to become a teacher like them. To become a teacher, obtaining a teaching license is essential. One must earn a degree from a college or junior college, complete teaching practice, and acquire the necessary credits. With a deep desire to understand education, I entered a national university of education. Lectures by renowned professors and connections with like-minded peers expanded my skills and boosted my motivation. During my college years, I had two significant experiences, or memories involving two people. One good, one bad, but which one should I start with? There was a volunteer education research group in college. This group actively exchanged ideas with other universities and focused on networking with like-minded individuals. At these regular meetings, not only were there social gatherings, but also opportunities to present our views. At one such meeting, I, representing my university, passionately spoke about my studies and my eagerness to excel as a teacher. After my presentation, the room erupted in applause and praise. A moment of great satisfaction and joy for me. It was then that Ruby, a fellow student from another university, approached me. I felt disgusted by your naive and superficial speech. Can't you talk more realistically? It was a total waste of time. I was taken aback by Ruby's sudden and harsh words at our first meeting. I was merely expressing my aspirations as a teacher. I thought I was being realistic. What exactly did you find unsatisfactory? As I responded, Ruby turned red with anger, hurling irrational insults before leaving in self-satisfaction. I had never encountered someone like her before and was left dumbfounded. Then, another student from Ruby's university approached me with an apologetic look. I'm sorry about my friend. She was irritable for not being selected as a speaker, and seeing your great presentation just set her off. This backstory, though enlightening, made me question how someone so self-centered and verbally abusive could be suited for teaching. In subsequent meetings, I encountered Ruby again. Her disdain for me seemed entrenched, as she continued to mock me and exhibit a sense of superiority, clearly pleased with herself. You're not cut out to be a teacher. Your naive and weak-minded approach is exactly what I despise. Did you hear my presentation? It encompassed the entire reality and suggested future directions. It was infinitely more meaningful than your trivial talk. I don't want to see your face at these meetings. Why don't you just drop out of university? These were just some of Ruby's words, but to me, her presentation was meaningless, self-righteous, and violent in its dismissal of opposing views. She mistook the silence after her presentation for awe at her brilliance. Encountering such a person was my biggest regret in attending these meetings. But apart from that, they were an excellent opportunity to broaden my horizons. As you've noticed, this was the unpleasant part of my story. Now, let me share something positive. An unavoidable step for obtaining a teaching qualification is participating in teaching practice. Many aspiring teachers work as tutors in learning centers for experience. I, too, had taught at a tutoring center, but felt a mix of nerves, anxiety, and excitement at the prospect of real school experience. My teaching practice began at a national high school affiliated with my university, allowing me to gain first-hand experience as a teacher. I learned a lot, often feeling overwhelmed, but I was determined not to let any of it slip through my fingers. Teaching practice, though just 3 weeks, led to a deep connection with one of my students. Rachel, a 9th grade student aspiring to be a teacher, often approached me with earnest questions. Why did you choose to become a teacher, Miss Matilda? I wonder if I'm cut out for teaching. I'm anxious. There are many ways to be involved in education, right? I haven't formed a clear vision yet, so I'm not sure what to do. I took care to thoughtfully respond to Rachel's serious inquiries. Though I was not yet a teacher and lacked life experience, I saw myself in her and wanted to help. Rachel trusted me greatly, and though our time together was short, she considered me a mentor. On my last day, as I was leaving the school, she said, I'll never forget meeting you, Miss Matilda. I'll work hard and seriously consider my path forward. Her words still resonate with me as if it were yesterday. A cherished memory with my first student. After graduating, I finally obtained my teaching license. Now, all that was left was to pass the recruitment exam to open the path as a teacher, but I had been contemplating deeply understanding education more. During my teaching practice, I saw Rachel struggling with her career path, and it made me wonder how to effectively convey meaningful information to someone like her. I wanted to delve deeper into both practical and theoretical aspects of education. So I decided to pursue graduate studies. In grad school, you set your own research theme and work towards it. I chose factors influencing approaches to personality development as my research topic. Simply put, it's about how to effectively engage with those seeking self-actualization. The research was more complex and challenging than I initially thought, but I found it incredibly fulfilling. I occasionally kept in touch with my first friend Rachel, who had decided to attend my alma mater. As for Ruby, a person I preferred to avoid, I heard from a friend at the meetings that she was hired as a teacher at a public high school in the city. Though I may not like her personally, it's always good to hear about someone you know succeeding. Torn between my eagerness to teach and my desire to learn more about education, I continued my grad school journey. Like in my undergraduate days, there were networking groups, and I joined them to broaden my horizons. The group included professionals interested in education, allowing me to discover worlds unknown to me, making each meeting exciting. It was at one of these meetings that I met Royce, my future husband. Royce, a public servant, was passionate and proud of his work, never sparing effort in his daily tasks. He was a great conversationalist, and our talks often set my heart racing. Eventually, I realized these flutters were signs of affection for Royce, which unsettled me as I had never been in a relationship before. Embarrassingly, I acted awkwardly around him several times due to my unfamiliar feelings. During this time of growing affection, Royce confessed his feelings for me, and we began dating, bringing me immense joy. As our relationship progressed smoothly and my graduate studies advanced, I finally graduated. I passed the teacher recruitment exam, was hired at a local high school, and received a marriage proposal from Royce. It was a time of significant beginnings in both my personal and professional life. Filled with high expectations of standing in front of students and interacting with them, I was ready to embark on my journey as a teacher. But a surprising event shattered these expectations. On my first day at the new school, I encountered someone I had hoped never to meet again, Ruby. By some twist of fate, she was working as a teacher at the same school I was assigned to. After my introduction on the first day, Ruby quickly started her harassment. "I'm surprised someone like you could become a teacher. How many years has it been since you graduated? And now you're just starting as a newbie? How incompetent can you be?" She scoffed. But I chose not to mention my graduate studies. It seems like an unnecessary hassle. When I remained silent, Ruby seemed to take it as a cue to continue her tirade against me. Despite years passing since our university days, her relentless animosity towards me was almost frightening. My subject was world history, and Ruby taught mathematics. Though our interactions were minimal due to our different subjects, Ruby always found a way to interfere. It was particularly burdensome when Ruby joined the committee for a school event. She had no business with my classes, but she would say, "Poor students having to endure your class. Luckily, they have my superior lessons as salvation. My students say they find my classes interesting and easy to understand." On the other hand, I never heard anything positive about Ruby's classes. I tried to ignore her, but that seemed to annoy her even more, making her provocations unbearable. A year of being tossed between my dream teaching life and the nightmare that was Ruby passed. And I was finally approved for my long-desired position at a remote island middle school. I wanted to implement my research theme, educational approaches to environmental differences, in a practical setting. Fortunately, Royce also received an assignment to the same island, allowing us to relocate together. When my transfer was confirmed, Ruby approached me, laughing. Going to the countryside? Perfect for an incompetent like you. It's like being a fallen warrior. It's for my research and a new challenge. Calling it countryside is disrespectful to the islanders. Unable to ignore her rude remark, I retorted only for her to laugh, and belittle my career choices, claiming it was pathetic. Convinced she was right, there was no reasoning with her. I'm transferring to a prestigious private high school. They specifically asked for someone as capable as me. Ruby proudly boasted about being hired at a prestigious school. One a banished incompetent, the other an excellent and beautiful female teacher. The contrast couldn't be clearer. Her comments about exile and beauty were so ridiculous that I just nodded and left. The students on the island, still somewhat naive compared to city high schoolers, were pure and sincere. I dedicated myself to my new teaching role. Royce, too, was working hard at his new job, boosting the island's tourism. 3 fulfilling years passed in this nature-rich environment, working and focusing on my research. Then I was invited to present my research findings at a conference in the city. The prospect of returning to the mainland filled me with anticipation, and Royce was able to join me on his vacation. The feeling was like a mini vacation. The conference venue was bustling with education professionals. Royce came to listen to my presentation and his support, and my nervous state was invaluable. When Royce left to greet someone he recognized, I heard a familiar voice from behind. Why are you here? This is a distinguished educational conference, not a place for a fallen warrior. I hadn't expected to encounter such a noisy woman here. Are you presenting something? You should probably not, just to avoid embarrassment. Ruby started talking fluently about how she was asked to attend this conference because of her performance at the famous school, even though I hadn't asked. Her condescending tone and manner were extremely irritating. It's my turn to present next. I'll let you watch so you don't despair over the difference between us. Ruby walked away, seemingly pleased with herself, but I was worried about her. I doubted whether she could make a decent presentation. And, as I suspected, Ruby's presentation turned out to be remarkably insubstantial. It was so lacking. It might be more accurate to say there was nothing there at all. Ruby's presentation lacked substantial data to support her theories, and her speaking skills were poor. Moreover, she spent much time bragging about irrelevant things. More than half of her talk was meaningless. The awkward atmosphere in the hall after her presentation reminded me of our university days. Apparently sensing the mood, Ruby quickly left the stage. During the 30-minute break, Ruby approached me again. Really, my sophisticated speech was probably too complex for ordinary people. I grace you with my presence, and this is the thanks I get? She loudly accused me in front of everyone, questioning how I managed to get the final slot in the program. She yelled loudly even though there were many people around her. Royce was beside me, astonished, as I had told him about this peculiar woman. He whispered, "Now I see." Ignoring her, Ruby got more agitated, calling me a low-intelligence teacher with no value. Her loud voice attracted everyone's attention. Then someone spoke up in my defense. Matilda is a wonderful teacher, very different from a fake like you. It was Rachel, my first student during my teaching practice. We had maintained a close relationship as she attended my alma mater. Rachel, after much contemplation and my advice, decided to support teachers rather than teach herself. She now worked for the Board of Education and was involved in organizing this conference. Ruby, I've heard quite a lot about you. My job keeps me well informed, Rachel said. Startled at first, Ruby quickly regained her composure and retorted, "Such insolence from a worthless teacher and a young girl. Go away, you're useless." Then an angry voice echoed, "Who are you speaking to like that?" It was the chairman of the City Teachers Union. Ruby turned pale upon realizing who it was. Matilda's father is the educational director of the Board of Education, and her mother is a highly respected educational critic, the chairman explained. Ruby immediately protested, accusing me of nepotism. Daughter of the educational director? That's favoritism. So unfair. Your narrow-mindedness is showing. Matilda's parents are just her background. Her invitation to this conference is due to her own achievement, Dr. Matilda. Wait, doctor? What do you mean? Ruby was confused. After completing my master's degree, I faced a dilemma about my career path. Torn between teaching and future research, I chose research. I continued the doctoral program and earned my PhD. Upon graduation, I asked the professors who wanted me to stay at the university if I could gain some practical experience by teaching. I had accumulated significant research on island education, and my long-term thesis was complete. This conference was an opportunity to present my findings. Then Royce, who was listening, said, "That was Ruby, right? We've been noticing a lot of issues with her. Discussions are underway whether to let her continue teaching." "What are you talking about? Who are you?" Ruby murmured in a fading voice, her face turning pale. Royce is a civil servant. Specifically, a national civil servant with a position in the U.S. Department of Education. He was on assignment to the island as part of a personnel exchange with the Ministry of the Interior, working on a rehabilitation program for problematic teachers. Because of this, he kept receiving updates about such teachers. The chairman's words, "You better be prepared," made Ruby kneel, cover her face, and cry. After my presentation, I received thunderous applause. Ruby had quietly disappeared from the venue. Royce and I had been assigned to the island for 3 years. I was expected to return to the university, and Royce's secondment was ending, so he was returning to the Department of Education. We moved back to the city together just as we had arrived. We invited Rachel to our new home. "I'm always grateful to your father, the education director. My dad also speaks highly of you, Rachel, calling you a capable and reliable staff member. Thanks for your help this time," I added. I knew about Ruby from you and thought she couldn't possibly be fit for teaching. A little investigation revealed a lot of issues. It wasn't difficult. Ruby's professional attitude was the worst, with no good reputation. She had managed to behave well during her transition to the private school, but her luck ran out, exposing her true capabilities and unsuitability for teaching. Her job at the private school was a 3-year contract, and she forced her way into the conference to try to extend it. Her participation in the conference, let alone her dreadful presentation, was unthinkable. Her plan to extend her contract through the conference ended in a disastrous result. The principal of the prestigious school, upon learning about her presentation and behavior at the conference, promptly terminated her employment. Ruby's misconduct led to her being sent to a rehabilitation program, but she foolishly fled, unable to cope. Ruby's abandonment of her duties has raised serious doubts about her suitability. A hearing for revoking her teaching license has begun. According to him, the revocation of her license was almost certain. Royce returned to his former position, finalizing the rehabilitation program, and was appointed leader of a new project. Rachel was making strides as a leader in reforming the working conditions of educational staff. I returned to the university to teach. Although it's different from teaching at middle and high schools, it's enjoyable and fulfilling, and I'm continuing my research, exploring new methods of education. I dream of my research nurturing the children of the future, making every day rewarding.